Is it just me? Or have you not left this room in like a month?
Yeah, I've been putting in a lot of hours to get this thing done for Golden Demon.
Hey, I got you covered. I'll let you borrow my pee jug. That way, you can cut down on wasted time away from your desk. Hey, don't get mad just because you didn't think of it first. Here, go ahead. Take it. Take it.
This past weekend, some buddies and I loaded up my truck to make our annual pilgrimage to the miniature gaming and hobbying capital of the world, Adepticon. It's basically Willy Wonka's chocolate factory for middle-aged men that like Space Marines. But today's video isn't just about Adepticon as an event. It's also about Adepticon as a destination. I spent the last few weeks leading up to Adepticon painting 10 hours a day in order to finish my diorama. So today we'll see how I painted the base, we'll pull the model all together and see how it looks completed, and see how it fared at Golden Demon. If you want to see how I built the base, as well as how I approached painting the undead in it, I'll put those videos above. And while this base didn't feel overly large when I was building it and placing the models on it to set the scene, now that I'm working on it with paint, it feels a whole lot bigger. The scene I'm trying to establish has a strong moonlit backlight. So I referenced photos I took on my phone where I just kind of set the scene with the lights in the darks and the blues to make sure I stayed in line to create that realistic effect. One of the most nerve-wracking aspects of this entire project was the fact that I really had no idea what it was going to look like when it was all done. There were so many individual models I had to paint for this diorama, and I painted them all separately. Plus, there's all these details in the base. I'd often have this feeling of dread that after all the work, once I put everything back together, it would just look terrible. And that's why I recommend if you're working on a more complex piece with more figures and they need to integrate and look cohesive, that you build it all before you ever start painting. But be sure that those models are only blue tacked down so you can pull them off and paint them separately later. A lot of the initial steps for painting the base are the same as any tabletop model you'd paint in an afternoon. Set down your base colors, dry brushing, and a bunch of washes. These help establish our tones, highlights, and deepest shadows. We only work on smaller and smaller details once these sound foundations are set. One of the biggest things that I've learned about painting for competition over the years is that it is, more than anything, a test of endurance. How many hours are you willing to put into painting individual rocks with many layers of highlights, glazing to smooth them out, and reworking or completely repainting something if it isn't as good as you think it should be? And yes, this does equate to how many hours you're willing to spend, but it's more like how much are you willing to drag out those hours in something that you usually just kind of rush over quickly in your everyday painting. And in an odd way, this approach connected me to many conversations I had while I was at Adepticon this year. Many of you told me things like, "Oh, I'm not very good at painting," or "I could never be as good as you." And I was really grateful to have conversations with people that started that way because it gave me the opportunity to tell them how wrong they were. I often say in my videos that I don't know what the heck I'm doing on some approach or some process or some technique on a paint job. And I'm not lying there, I really don't. But don't let the fear of the new or the unknown stop you. The majority of my aha moments in painting have come from trying something new, from trying my hardest knowing that I'll probably fail. Because when you try to push yourself, it improves your entire painting game. For example, if you were to try your very hardest and paint a Space Marine in 10 hours, it would actually make you better at painting Space Marines in 1 to 2 hours. The reason why is because you learn what works well, what makes major impacts, and what is pretty much a waste of time when you're not trying your hardest. When I got to painting these little plants, I wanted to keep them subdued in color, as this is an undead scene and I want the models to be the focus. I'm also going to add a bunch of grass tufts to the base at the very end. So if these plants need tweaks in color to fit in with the other vegetation, I can always change it then. We're now on to the part of this entire project that I dreaded the most, and that would be painting the trees, the bat swarms, and the zombies that are coming out of the ground. The main reason why these are such an utter pain comes down to control. While you're holding on to such a large base in one hand, you often can't have your hands and wrists stable in order to paint the details, and you're constantly working around small, fragile details that will snap off if you accidentally bump them. And to break them, I did. I stopped counting how many times I snapped off a tree limb or a little bat after about the 5th time. I'm not sure if I would have been better off painting them separately because of how the trees and the zombies are integrated into the scene. I think to make them feel really natural, this is the way it needs to be done, and I guess I just need to get better at doing it.
Today's video is brought to us by Ghostfire Gaming and their latest season of Fables, titled Agents of the Empire. The Fables system is a complete RPG campaign released in 6 monthly episodes. They're presented this way so you can work your way through the campaign at your own pace, while knowing that you're receiving a campaign filled with more amazing twists, wild NPCs, and insane battles than any single book could offer. The current season puts players in this wild magic meets steampunk meets James Bond style espionage, while the players take the roles of the secret agents. Have you ever wanted to play a game where you could harness the energy of Ethereum to power your own magically infused Zeppelin? Because that's just one of the things you can earn or steal as a secret agent barbarian. Fables is 5e compatible, as well as flexible enough to adapt to your RPG system of choice, and it includes maps, tokens, and handouts, so running the game both in person or on a virtual tabletop is a breeze. And the latest episode just dropped. And don't worry that you're jumping in halfway through the season. If you sign up, you get a sweet discount on all the previous episodes. I really am grateful to Ghostfire Gaming for sponsoring this episode because I just love their products and have used them far before they started advertising with me. Check out the links down below so you can sign up for the latest season of Fables. Now let's get back to the video.
I do think I should have painted all the bat swarms separately and just glued them on the trees at the end. They have so many tiny details, and it felt like I was taking forever to paint these things because it was so hard to get those exact lines and dots correct on those tiny, tiny models. And strategically, I saved this step of the process to basically the very end of the entire painting project, knowing that it was going to suck. Because I was so close to the finish line, I just needed to buckle down and make sure I could get across that line. When I was struggling, I just visualized that in only a few days, I'd be wandering the amazing vendor hall of Adepticon, seeing new booths and buying new minis, revisiting friends that work at the booths for games, paints, and models that I love. And while I'm checking out all these cool things for sale, the last thing I want is to have this nagging feeling in the back of my head that I phoned it in on those stupid bats and they look like trash and there's no chance for me to win because those bats look like butts. And maybe that's a bit of my neurotic brain kind of sinking in there, but I do think that the one time in our miniature painting lives that it's okay to really go 100% ball sack on those tiny, tiny details is when you're going to put it up for public viewing in a competition. Otherwise, just don't paint the boots, man. Luckily, after all those steps came the most fun part of the entire project, and that was adding a variety of grasses and tufts. I used my favorite super tiny green moss in AK Interactive's dark green moss, as well as a wonderful variety of all the less colorful tufts from the Gamer's Grass line. I love how placing just a number of strategic tufts can have such a massive impact and bring a piece to life, whether it's a single figure or a whole scene like this. I was nervous about adding too many tufts, but after coming back to the piece the following day to add some other fun details like pigment powders, I added even more, and I'm happy with how filled out it now looks. Now at this point in the project, we are not 100% done, but I decided to turn the camera off. There was a lot of final fiddling with blends, adding some color variation to rocks and soil, reworking the lighting on some of the areas of the trees so it would line up correctly with our two light scenes, and other finicky details to do. And that's not even considering placing the models back onto the diorama and adjusting details on them so they fit the scene exactly as well. I needed to see this piece across the finish line without worrying about the camera being in focus, turning the base so the camera would see what I was doing, and overall making an already difficult task even harder. But don't worry, you won't have to wait very long to see the model completed. But in the meantime, why don't you come with me and walk around Adepticon? There's some stuff I want to talk to you about. Our hobby is one where most of our time is spent alone. Building, painting, list writing, book reading, strategy researching, all of these things we do by ourselves. And for most of us, every so often, we're fortunate enough to get to play a game with a friend in person or another local player. Or maybe we are able to get together and just paint if that's the thing we like to do with others. I consider myself very fortunate to be able to do my hobbying with you. Sure, you're not down here in my basement, but I do feel like you're here with me. If you're watching YouTube videos, hanging out in a Twitch stream, or listening to the Trapped Under Plastic podcast while you hobby, it's the closest most of us get to doing hobbying with others. Conventions like Adepticon remind us that we aren't alone, and that there are thousands of other people that love the things we love, play the games we play, and laugh at the things we laugh at. We are a community. And while attending Adepticon every year reminds me of this and energizes me for the next year to come, I want us to try to do a better job of helping each other, supporting each other, and knowing that we're all in this fun miniature painting journey together. And then there's Golden Demon. On one hand, one of my favorite things to do at the convention is to go around the display cases with friends, analyzing and becoming inspired by the work of others. There's a palpable energy around those cases 24 hours a day. And you get to meet complete strangers and talk about what you each painted, commiserating over all the grueling hours and congratulating each other on seeing that task through to the finish line. And you're truly happy for each other. On the other hand, Golden Demon is an inherently cutthroat competition, one that hasn't evolved or changed with the art form and the hobby in over 20 years. There are 3 awards in each category, no matter how many works of art are worthy of award. This creates an environment that borders on toxic, because if you win, the internet rages that you didn't deserve it. And if you lose, you can't have an opinion because that just makes you a sore loser. And spoilers, I didn't win. And as much as I do not feel like a sore loser, I feel like anything I talk about the Golden Demon competition that criticizes or looks at it in any other light other than amazing will be looked at that way. My diorama received a finalist pin and a commended entry, putting it in the top 6 in the diorama category. But I did not go home with a gold, silver, or bronze Golden Demon statue. And I will be honest with you, after all that work and time and pressure I put on myself, my soul was crushed a little bit in this. Just as every other competitor that put a bit of themselves into their amazing pieces was surely crushed. But I was also filled with so much joy and happiness for the winners. I was happy for my good friend Ben Cantor. That son of a bitch beat me and got a well-deserved gold for his diorama. My friend Andy won 2 golds, and Neil, whom I'd never met before the weekend, but hit it off with quickly, and we laughed together harder than any time I had over the entire weekend. He won the Slayer Sword. Thank you for hanging out with me through this 3-part series, even though it didn't end in the way I hoped it would. Part of me regrets that I didn't document every single brushstroke of this whole diorama for you, but that likely would have bored you to tears anyway. But without you watching these videos and helping them have some success on YouTube, there's no way I could have completed this project for Golden Demon. As fresh as the wounds are, and as much as I'm almost wincing at the thought of asking you this question, should we do it again next year? Would you like to see another series about me painting up a piece for Golden Demon? Because you better believe that failure is not an option. Please let me know if you'd like to go through this again with me by saying so in the comments below. Also, if you have an awesome idea on what I should paint for Golden Demon, I'd love to hear those as well. But please, no dioramas. I don't think I can handle another one of those so soon. I mean, unless it's like 1.5 models on a 35mm base, that kind of diorama I could do. And if you enjoyed this series or just the videos I make in general and you want to support me to ensure I can continue to do them, check out the Patreon link down below so you can join the amazing group of people and you check out the perks that you get for joining us over there as well. I'm going to see you back here again real soon with a video that I've been excited to do for quite some time that's mean, green, and full of DACA. And between now and then, make sure you find time in your day to slay the gray.
Hey man, peanut butter, buttercups, starfishes, sea cucumbers, orangutan babies with hands as feet and feet as hands.